It's unbelievable that the government, in the form of the Secretary of State, would be trying to tell law-abiding Louisiana citizens that they do not have an unqualified right under the Constitution to exercise free speech in the form of an exit poll, just like bona fide, quote-unquote, news organizations have a right to. Where in the Constitution is this distinction made? It's made nowhere. We're a government of, by, and for the people. And this bill, SB 80, would basically prohibit anybody except bona fide news organizations, as determined by the Secretary of State, from conducting exit polls. It's obnoxiously unconstitutional. Clearly, it's being brought by the Secretary of State because she doesn't want ordinary, regular citizens to really understand and have full transparency about what's going on in our elections. And we have a right to know that. And so this bill is flagrantly unconstitutional. I hate it almost as much as you do, Danielle.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again on the State of Freedom.
Good morning, everyone. Joining us today is a friend of the show, Representative Raymond Cruz. We'll be talking to him about his gold and silver bill that will be hitting committee soon. And then we'll be blitzing quickly through what happened yesterday and what to expect this week, because we got to get Chris down to the legislature to start testifying. So before we get started, let's set the tone with the scripture of the day. It's Matthew chapter 8, verses 19 through 22. And it says, all right. Now is the time to follow me, and let those who are dead bury their own dead. And I've always found this scripture to be so shocking and kind of offensive, but the Passion Translation, which is what I read it out of, explains it better than I've understood it. It explains in the footnotes that in Jewish culture at the time of Jesus, the Jewish culture gave the family the responsibility of a reinterment of the bones of the deceased 1 year after death. And it goes on to explain that it's possible that this man's father had passed away the year before, and the year had not yet been completed. So Jesus was potentially, and I think fairly likely saying, or the man was saying, I'll follow you after the year is completed. Jesus isn't telling him to dishonor his father by not doing a burial and not taking care of him. But the custom of waiting a year, the tradition, is what Jesus was saying can't get in the way of following him. So what struck me this morning before the footnotes is that, even that aside, if people at that time truly understood that Jesus was the Messiah, what could have kept them from following him? This is the Son of God who holds the key of David, the only one who can save your soul. What can be more important than following him? And regardless of what culture was saying at that time and what was actually going on with that man, I think that should still speak to us today. The order set out by the scriptures is this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind and strength, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And so I think that tells it to us perfectly. We have to prioritize the Lord, and then the rest of things can fall into place after that.
Yeah. In fact, Danielle, Jesus said, if all of the only thing we had in the Bible, thank God we have a lot more, but if all we had in the Bible was what you just said, it sums up all of the law and all of the prophets. As Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. If that's all we had, that would provide sufficient grace to follow Jesus and get to heaven. Thank God. And speaking of someone who certainly knows the scripture and someone who builds his life on the scripture and has done so much in the legislature, to advance not only the kingdom of God, but to advance good temporal measures as well on this earth, is Representative Raymond Cruz. Raymond, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to join the State of Freedom this morning. We know all of us are busy today, but we had to have you on to talk about your gold and silver bill, which you're bringing back again this year. And we're going to work very, very hard to help get that through for so many different reasons. Tell us about the gold and silver bill, if there's anything different about it than last year, and how do you handicap it going forward this session?
Well, thank you, Chris and Danielle. Yeah, that scripture tells us about priorities, right? What we're supposed to put first. And a related thing is the things that we do and the things we leave undone. And this to me is something that we've left undone for decades, generations now, is we've let the working class basically bear the brunt of inflation. So several of us, we have the capability to buy real estate, brokerage accounts, whatever, to outpace inflation. But there's a large segment of Louisiana. We know crime, education, poverty come up predominantly in Louisiana. That poverty one, how does one get ahead if the earnings they're making are continuously eroded? That's the real question. I sit as the chairman of labor and industrial relations, and I hear lots of bills come through all the time, hoping and advocating for the worker to help them out, get them an improvement in whatever their working conditions is. But I say until we address this particular issue, it's hopeless until you've got some kind of way to know, as in the Bible says in Haggai, that the worker puts his wages into a bag full of holes. That's kind of what inflation
Yeah.
is. You put the money in, and when you go back and look, it's already fallen out the bottom. So this particular bill is seeking to address that. And this isn't just Louisiana. I want to be clear about that. There are about 25 states seeking similar legislation. This is something our founders recognized from the beginning. They put it right there in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, saying states can recognize gold and silver as legal tender. Now, it was very important they couldn't print money because, that would just make a very complicated system, but they could recognize gold and silver. And last year, if you'll remember, Senator Mark Abraham put forth a bill and we passed it that says gold and silver is legal tender. It sounds like that's it, right? Well, the problem is, how does a merchant take that? Who's equipped to be able to take the weight and the inconvenience of having heavy gold coins around? And, there's always the threat of theft and whatnot. But now we live in a day and age where we can get beyond that just with technology. Most of us have a little piece of plastic in our wallet that allows us to spend as if we have cash, and we don't have US dollars in our pocket, but we have a piece of plastic that serves in their place. And that's what this bill would do. It would allow you to access your gold and silver holdings through a debit card, and the merchant wouldn't be any the wiser, that no changes to them, and it would be super convenient for you. And of course, the good thing is, if ever, we pray it doesn't happen, but bad times befall and you actually need the gold, you could physically go to the depository and pick your gold up.
Yeah. And Raymond, as you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that President Trump has at least hinted at the idea of moving our currency back to the gold standard. Is that going to weigh in at all in the conversations you expect in committee?
I don't think so. It may come up, but predominantly the people I've talked to, I haven't had any citizen come up and say, I don't like this idea. The only people I've heard come up and say, I don't like this idea are banks. And I don't think they're being straightforward about what they're worried about. They have said in their roundtables around the state, they go and visit with all the legislators, have us to lunch or whatever, and describe what they think is important in this legislative session. And right there on the sheet, it says oppose gold and silver for two reasons. It said because they don't want to set up a state bank and they don't want to set up a depository. And I said, well, congratulations. My bill doesn't do either of those things. All it does is facilitate a system to where we're able to utilize gold and silver. So I don't think they were being honest about it, because once I made that clear to them, I stood up and talked to everybody. The attorneys, the representatives for the LBA still told me, well, we still don't like it. So there's something else. I think maybe there's a fear that people will drain their savings and put it all in gold, but I think that's misplaced for one. Everybody talks about diversification. You like to have different forms of payment. And I just think this is another thing, like having a Venmo card, it's just a different way to pay, but it's anchored on a concept that's as old as the Constitution itself and millennia before that. Our founders thought very highly of gold. As a matter of fact, Thomas Jefferson didn't want paper money. Matter of fact, most of the original founders did not want paper money. They were scared of the idea. This is just saying, hey, let's give some people security, again, by having a tangible physical asset they can look at, touch, hold, and use in trade.
I think you hit the nail on the head, because every single dollar that doesn't go into a bank is $10 that the bank doesn't get to use because of their Ponzi scheme with our dollars. So kudos to you. How are you feeling about what the committees might do? I know last year Louisiana's House and Governmental Affairs Committee, I thought
Commerce,
gave a
right?
very, it was Commerce. I thought it was, okay. Sorry for that. It gave it a very, I don't know. I thought it was a very embarrassing hearing for the legislators up there that were questioning this in really ignorant in a really ignorant manner. But do you think that maybe some of the minds have changed since their constituents may have weighed in over the last year?
I've spoken to several of them, and they definitely understand the concept better, and they're more comfortable with it. But I don't know if that's going to translate into votes or not, because the bankers are a powerful lobby. There's no question. Now, if the room is full of people, our residents that say, "Hey, I want this," I think that can definitely change the tide there. Because
Yeah.
it's once
We're
people
gonna
realize this is a right that people have, and we're going to recognize it. And why do they have any ability to step in between us and the Constitution and what it grants us?
Yeah.
It's hard to
It's
imagine.
agree. And we're going to do the best we can, Ray, to educate our members across Louisiana and make sure they understand how important this is and that the room is filled with citizens. Because as you told us last year, well, you were on the show, when your legislation last year was pending, 9 out of 10 Louisiana citizens favor exactly what you're doing. So this really is the lines are drawn pretty clearly here between the desires of ordinary Louisiana citizens to secure their economic futures and a big special interest. And at some point legislators are going to have to make a decision about where they stand. And that is what we are all about.
Well, I tell you that decision last year, one of the resistance, one of the points of their argument was, why do we have to be first? And of course, that attitude keeps us last in lots of things.
Yes,
but now we don't have to be first. Guess what? Arkansas passed this, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, and the governor signed it. And Florida just passed it through their House, and from what I understand, unanimously, but unfortunately their session ends, from what I understand, Friday. So they may not get it this year. Utah passed it through both houses of the legislature, but the governor vetoed it, but it's expected to be overridden. But there are 25 states, at my last count, that are pursuing this type of legislation. And if we're even fourth, fifth, sixth, our residents are going to go to Texas, they're going to go to Mississippi, they're going to Arkansas, whoever's got this, and they're going to get their gold card with them. And then we've lost out again. The banks are losing out of transaction fees they could be getting. And, it's possible they could be making loans against this commodity, which is a very, very good way to secure your collateral. I guess I'm trying to say it's a great collateral. So I don't know why they wouldn't want this, other than they're just scared of either exposing what fractional banking is, or if they're really worried about people draining their deposits. I just think that's a misplaced fear.
Yeah. Well, we have an opportunity here to be forward thinking and to take some bold action that protects Louisiana citizens. And we are so happy to be on board with you, Raymond, on this legislation. We have a call to action that is up that we are encouraging all of our members to do for the House Commerce Committee members. And we just look forward to supporting you on this legislation. And God willing, and a lot of hard work, we'll get it through. And thank you so much.
I've got a meeting with some people today that may be backing this from the finance industry. Hopefully that meeting will go well and we'll be able to have somebody sponsor this with us.
Yeah. Well, let's march onward. Let's march onward. And I look forward to seeing you here in a little while down at the Capitol, sir.
Fantastic. Have a safe drive, and thank y'all so much for what you do.
God bless you.
Thank you, Raymond. One quick question before you go. Has this been scheduled in Commerce?
It hasn't yet, but I understand it's supposed to be for next week.
Okay, great. We'll make sure people are busy taking action on it.
Good deal. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a great day ahead.
You too. Bye-bye.
The secret to losing weight 2 times faster has gone viral. See the transformations hundreds of thousands of people are experiencing around the world with the Slender Eyes drops. These homeopathic drops are proven to control appetite, support thyroid function, help balance the body's pH, improve energy, boost mood, and increase metabolic rate. I've heard firsthand testimonials from droppers in their 20s to droppers in their 80s who say that the Slender Eyes drops have completely revolutionized their lives. Try the drops today to see the results for yourself. To learn more about the Slender Eyes drops or other incredible natural wellness and lifestyle products, email me at info@freedomstate.us and put drops in the subject line, or visit the Shop Our Partners page at freedomstate.us. We also have links to those in the show notes. Thank you for supporting the State of Freedom. All right, Chris. Well, seeing Let's see. Let me help him get out. All right. There we go. Sorry. Busy day ahead. I'm excited for Raymond. I'm really thankful that he has the tenacity on this one. And I mean, he just clearly believes in it so strongly that he would be bringing it back. And he's been, I know, busy pursuing support for this since the moment it failed. I don't think he has really even taken a pause from that. I know we were talking about it, I think even last summer already in the aftermath. But why don't we, Chris, get going? We have some reporting to do on what happened yesterday. It was a busy day yesterday, but today is more like a tornado. Today, there's so much happening that it's almost hard to wrap your hands around.
It really is, and let me run through them,
Yeah.
Danielle, with you. So this year, the cockroach bill, the cell phone bill, has been brought back again, and I testified yesterday against that legislation along with a number of other people. But it is part of the governor's insurance reform package this year, and so the legislators in committee were very reluctant to kill this bill in committee. You recall, it was
So gross.
crushed on the House floor last year because Louisiana citizens don't want this, but it passed out of committee yesterday. So we're continuing to oppose this cell phone bill criminalizing a handheld cell phone in your car. And we have a call to action up at LACAG.org Action Center. So we look forward to everybody doing that call to action. And we'll continue to fight this legislation this session. SB 100, Miguez.
Wait, Chris, let me
Yeah,
ask you a quick question on
yeah,
this, and then we can kind of continue
sure.
on. So this bill is not quite as horrible as it had been in previous iterations, but I find the fact that these guys are just continuing to support the legislation is abhorrent to me.
Yeah.
It's absolutely abhorrent to me, and they're not listening to the citizens. They're
Danielle,
not listening to the
they're not
citizens.
listening. This is government overreach at its finest. And as far as insurance rates, I can guarantee you that people who are pulled over and given moving violations for holding a cell phone to their ear is simply going to drive insurance rates up even further. Because under this legislation by Representative Glorioso, if you get cited for this, it is a moving violation. I can tell you 100% your insurance rates are going to go up.
And the bill
Insurance
is
rates
so
are not going to go down.
complicated. The bill is so complicated.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's going to even be hard. It's going to be his word versus my word if I get pulled over,
Yeah, the bill
because how do
says,
they know? How do they know what I was on my phone doing? It's completely ridiculous. I'm sorry. I
Danielle,
won't make us stop there too long, but
no, I just want to tell you the bill specifically says that the only thing that's required for the citation is an officer's unobstructed view of an individual driver talking on a cell phone. So it's the officer's word against the driver's word.
yeah.
I mean, so this is just a bad bill all the way around, Danielle, from a constitutional perspective and from an insurance perspective and from a big brother government perspective. I don't need the government babysitting me. There are millions of Louisiana citizens every day who are perfectly capable of talking on a phone and driving a vehicle at the same time. And there's no correlation at all between talking on a handheld cell phone, as Ed Tarpley pointed out once again yesterday, and reduced traffic accidents, which is the stated objective of this. But this bill is a revenue harvesting bill. That's exactly what Representative Bayham said last year. The state needs money, and instead of doing the deep dive into the waste and fraud in our government, they're looking for other ways to gain revenue, and that's what this is about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move to the Senate Finance. What you saw and heard in there yesterday with Senate Miguez's SB 100. Really, I think this is a great bill because it's going to help us get some numbers on how much of our money is being wasted on illegal immigrants.
Yeah. Passed through Senate Finance yesterday. I had the pleasure of testifying in favor of it, and it creates real transparency on the part of how much of Louisiana taxpayer money is being spent on illegal aliens, public programs in Louisiana, and it's a lot of money. And so it's gonna require agencies to provide that information, and it's going to require law enforcement or any state agency to which an illegal alien is either applying for public benefits or receiving currently public benefits to report that individual to ICE. So it's very, very good legislation. This is essentially codifying Governor Landry's executive order from last year, and we're very pleased with the legislation. Louisiana citizens cannot stand the idea, particularly with all the fraud that already exists in our government, and while they're struggling to pay their own bills and survive the insurance rates and all the rest of it, to know that illegal aliens are receiving millions and millions of dollars of public benefits from our coffers. It's just a terrible thing, and Louisiana citizens have a right to know what's going on with their tax dollars, and that's what this bill does.
And it has teeth, right?
Real teeth. Yes.
Yeah, that's what we're
real
looking
teeth.
for, not just words, but real teeth. All right, awesome. Then you were in House and Governmental Affairs yesterday as well, Chris. Representative Beaulieu has brought a bill, HB 592, that does some regulations around our elections. You seem to think that this isn't a terrible bill altogether, but there is a bad provision that you think needs to be removed.
This actually passed on the House floor yesterday, Danielle, because I don't think that many of the Republicans understand the poison pill that is in this legislation. This is an election bill, which really clarifies a lot of issues, talks about closed primaries, largely a good bill and rather innocuous bill for that matter. But there's a provision in there that changes the law to require legal challenges to proposed constitutional amendments to be made after the election has already occurred. I guarantee you this is in response to Constitutional Amendment 2 and the damage that was done to that effort by William Most's legal challenge to that terrible constitutional amendment. And so the legislature is trying to say, okay, we're going to make sure that from now on there can be no preemptive challenges to constitutional amendments. We're just going to make them all have to occur after the election. So at that point, assuming the people are not really properly informed and they go vote for something and it passes, and then you challenge it, a judge is going to be much less likely to grant legal relief because they're going to say, oh, well, it already passed. The people wanted it. So that's what they're trying to do. There's no reason why a legal challenge to a constitutional amendment should not be able to be made before the vote occurs so the public can be properly aware of what is going on and the legal deficiencies in a proposed amendment. So we're going to do everything we can to get this amendment pulled out of 590. It's not an amendment. It's just in the bill, pulled out of 592 on the Senate side. Because it's just not good. It's not good for the people, and it's not good public policy.
No, and I describe this as a Chinese finger trap, Chris, because it is one of those things where we all sat and watched in complete horror as all of President Trump's, or many of President Trump's legal challenges to 2020, for instance, were thrown out on standing. And you know that if they would have challenged it before, they would have said that anyone who tried to challenge the election before, they said, well, you have to wait until after the election so we know that fraud occurred. So this is the same kind of nonsense that we saw in 2020. They're trying to put us in a position where no matter what, they will prevail.
Yes, exactly. And so if there are legal deficiencies or constitutional deficiencies in a proposed constitutional amendment, there is no reason why that legal challenge should not be able to be made before an election occurs. Because guess what happens? If a judge sustains it and determines this cannot go forward, you save a lot of taxpayer money. You save a lot of work on the part of the Secretary of State and other agencies who have to prepare ballots. And you save people from having to take time out of their lives to go vote on something that's ultimately going to be thrown out. So there's a lot of good reasons to take this part of this bill out and allow people to make preemptive challenges to amendments. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure it happens.
Yeah, and kudos to you, Chris, and so many out there who have been watching every single piece of legislation that comes through that has the word election in it, because we learned last year, and thankfully we learned in time, that there are elements in our legislature who are putting in nasty, nasty little provisions in election bills to hamstring the will of the people and to basically, I mean, I'll just say it, really give unfettered power to either the legislature or the Secretary of State. And that is abhorrent to me. That is something that we are watching like a hawk. And I think we're going to be calling it out every step of the way because I won't tolerate it.
There are a lot of different ways, Danielle, for them to sneak these things into these bills that are otherwise innocuous and even good. And that's why you have to sometimes go through these things with a fine-tooth comb to find it, because sometimes there are provisions that should rightly derail an entire bill because of something snuck in there that is fatally flawed. And so that's what we're on the lookout for.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chris. Okay, I'll move us along to Senate Environmental Quality. Senator Facey's chemtrail bill, SB 46, passed the Senate yesterday.
Yes, get the pollutants out of the air and preserve the health of our citizens. No more chemtrails, at least if it passes over on the House side, but it passed the Senate yesterday in a strict party line vote, 27-12, all Republicans voting yes. And now it moves over to the House. I'm sure environmental quality over on the House side, but we don't know for sure where it's going, but we're following it. And we have a call to action up at LACAG.org on this very important bill. Other states have already banned chemtrails, by the way, Danielle.
It really begs the question, why do the Democrats want to be poisoned? But I just don't get it. But anyway, I
Yeah.
guess they're allowed to vote however they want, obviously.
They can. To their credit, they've sided with us, or we've sided with them on a number of things recently that are critically important. But on certain things, they just are not willing to look at it objectively. I still think there are situations where Democrats simply reflexively oppose initiatives and legislation simply because the Republicans support it. And I think that's unfortunate because we've got to come to a point where we're looking objectively at legislation on an individual basis to determine what's good and what's bad. We got to get away from this reflective party line voting. It's not good for the citizens.
It's true. And, while we at least pride ourselves and do our level best to look at things, calling balls and strikes, the Republicans are just as guilty of that. Look at the way they handle the criminal session. Look at the way they do criminal justice generally. It's absolutely a reflexive thing,
That's a great point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, coming up today is a complete blitz, and you are going to have your hands full, Chris. I hope you have a lot of coffee in your system.
A lot of coffee already and more on the way. The pipeline is open, unclogged, and ready to receive.
If you are down at the Capitol today and you see Chris, buy this man a cup of coffee. Pending final Senate vote today is Senate Bill 80 by Senator Greg Miller. This is the bill that I hate with the fire of a thousand suns because it is aiming to give Nancy Landry the right to say who is and who is not a journalist when it relates to exit polling.
That's right. It has to do with exit polls. And it's unbelievable that the government, in the form of the Secretary of State, would be trying to tell law abiding Louisiana citizens that they do not have an unqualified right under the Constitution to exercise free speech in the form of an exit poll, just like bona fide quote unquote news organizations have a right to. Where in the Constitution is this distinction made? It's made nowhere. We're a government of, by, and for the people. And this bill, SB 80, would basically prohibit anybody except bona fide news organizations, as determined by the Secretary of State, from conducting exit polls. Mm-hmm. It's obnoxiously unconstitutional. Clearly, it's being brought by the Secretary of State because she doesn't want ordinary, regular citizens to really understand and have full transparency about what's going on in our elections. And we have a right to know that. And so this bill is flagrantly unconstitutional. I hate it almost as much as you do, Danielle, but it passed out of a Republican Senate Governmental Affairs Committee, and it's set for a final Senate vote today in the full Senate, and then goes over to the House. So we have a call to action up on this bill, SB 80. It's extremely important as a matter of both precedent and really practicality that this bill be defeated because it is flagrantly discriminatory against ordinary Louisiana citizens.
Yeah, and I will take every opportunity I get to remind our listeners that it was the office of the Louisiana Secretary of State under Kyle Ardwin, and Nancy Landry worked in his office at that time to censor the people. It was their office that were charged with and took up the mantle, and were very proud of the fact that they were censoring us during 2020, 2021. And this is a continuation of that apparent disease that is running rampant in the Secretary of State's office, which is to silence the voice of the people. And I would like to remind the Secretary of State that she works for the people, not above the people. And she doesn't get to tell us where we get to stand, and she doesn't get to tell us what we are allowed to say and who's allowed to say what. That is not her job. And I would really like for her to go and review her job description.
Exactly. The government, it is not allowed under the Constitution to be in the business of policing speech. In fact, it is illegal. And so you're exactly right, Danielle. She needs to understand what her job is, stay in her lane, and leave the First Amendment alone, and not ask the legislature to do her unconstitutional bidding either.
And she is in charge of arbitering our number one way that we are allowed to speak, right? That our speech is being heard, our elections. So I would like for her to focus on our elections, and I would like for her to do it in a way that makes sure that our voices are heard. So if you think about free speech and elections as one unit, as one and the same, the way that she's handling our speech is the way that she is handling our elections. And that's something that we need to keep laser focused on.
So well said. So well said. In fact, many would argue that the core expression of free speech under the First Amendment is our expression of our vote.
Exactly. So all eyes on Nancy Landry. Not impressed so far. Okay, next up, Chris. Today, also, House Natural Resources. Almost all of the carbon capture and sequestration bills are going to be heard in Representative Guyman's committee today. I know you are looking to testify on a number of them. Do you want to run through them?
Yeah, I'm testifying on the three arguably most important carbon capture sequestration bills that are up today in House Natural Resources. HB 4, Danielle, by Representative Owen, that will confer local autonomy, local authority on local jurisdictions to make individualized determinations about whether or not they want this carbon capture sequestration racket in their parish. Very important piece of legislation. I'll also be testifying on HB 380 by Representative Schamerhorn, which will repeal the 2020 finding under SB 353 that this CCS racket is a, quote, public good, and therefore private corporations are allowed to seize private property against a landowner's will to develop these projects on their property, eminent domain. His bill will repeal both of those provisions of current Louisiana law. Hugely important piece of legislation in natural resources. I'm also going to be testifying in favor of HB 522 by Representative McCormick, which will impose a 1-year moratorium on all CCS development in Louisiana so that the issue can be more fully and completely studied. And the reason why this is important, Danielle, is when this CCS racket was codified in 2020 under Sharon Hewitt's SB 353, it was done so with no legislative debate whatsoever. Can you imagine imposing a policy with the kind of implications that this CCS has on the citizens of this state, and there be no debate over it among Republicans in the legislature? It just flies through. Like you're
That's
naming,
the height of arrogance, Chris.
It's the height of arrogance, like you're naming a building or commemorating a statue for somebody. It's extraordinary, and Louisiana citizens are outraged by the way this went down then, and they are fully engaged on this legislation in House Natural Resources. I cannot wait to get down there and testify on these bills.
I hope
And
somebody's
by the way,
saving you a
Danielle,
seat.
yeah, well, I don't care if I have to stand, but on HB 4, the local authority bill, and on HB 380, the eminent domain bill, we have call to actions up at LACAG.org Action Center, and we're working on getting a call to action up on Representative McCormick's bill on the moratorium. So do these calls to action. They make a big difference.
Yeah, they do. They make a huge difference. Okay, next up, Chris, you are also going to somehow try and clone yourself to be in House Health and Welfare. Emily Chenevier's bill for parental consent, giving authority back to the parents with respect to their minor children's health decisions is going to be debated today.
Yeah. You know, Danielle, I haven't even had a chance to go back and look at which legislator authored the current law in Louisiana years ago that allows a minor to go in and receive major medical treatment and procedures without parental consent or knowledge. But I would like to know who that is, and I
Yeah.
would like to know who was in the legislature at the time that passed. But that is the current law in Louisiana. Representative Emily Chenevere's bill, HB 400, will repeal that and will specifically require what everybody knows should already be the case: parents to know and be informed about any medical decisions or procedures that their minor child is contemplating or wants to take or have. So this should be absolutely nonsensical. So we're going to be watching this very, very closely to see any Republicans who vote against this,
Any
because
people,
they should.
any people, any
People, even
parents.
Democrats.
Yeah, come on. This is so
Even
crazy.
Democrats.
This
Exactly.
is
You're
so
exactly
crazy.
right.
Will
Yeah.
our
And
friend
so
Paige Lowry be testifying? You expect her to be
I
testifying?
don't know. I reached out to Paige. I haven't heard back from her yet, but I certainly hope she's down there. And by the way, we have a call to action up at LACAG.org Action Center on HB 400. So please make sure everybody goes and does that call to action.
Great. Okay. And then House and Governmental Affairs. Also today is a bill, Daryl Desautel's House Bill 577, related to election system procurement. This is a concerning one.
Very concerning.
We've gotten quite a few emails about this one.
Yeah, this is very concerning, Danielle, because and I know that this was initiated by the Louisiana Secretary of State, Nancy Landry, and it will allow her to skirt the traditional procurement process when it comes to acquiring our new election system. And so we have to make sure that we strongly oppose this legislation, and she should have to open any proposed system to any and all vendors, any and all competitors through a competitive bid, not through some invitation to negotiate that she alone decides and she alone ultimately makes the decision about where we go and regarding our elections. This is not a good bill, and I'm going to
It's not a good
oppose
look
this.
either.
It's not a good look. It's not a good look for the legislature. Another reason why this is not good is because it flies in the face of President Trump's current executive order, which we've talked about before, that imposes certain requirements regarding new election systems, including that it be that the Department of Homeland Security and EAC study every electronic voting system in the country and make sure that they're safe and secure, which I guarantee you they're going to find out that they're not. So this bill cannot pass. HB 577 is horrible.
Chris, I just wish that Secretary of State Nancy Landry would be focused on figuring out a way to make sure that only citizens vote in our elections, because that should have been something that's already been enacted. We know it hasn't. There's another election coming up in May, as I understand. What are we going to do for that? Why are we doing this kind of nonsense when when her office hasn't even started enforcing the laws that they got passed
That they have
last
right
year?
now regarding requiring people to produce verification of citizenship when they're trying to register to vote. That went into effect January of this year, that bill. And the registrars of voters and the local election officials haven't heard anything from the Secretary of State regarding how we enforce it. What are the guidelines? That's a lot more important than some of the other things that she's trying to do in the legislature, and much more helpful and a lot less harmful.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Also today, Senate Judiciary A will be hearing Senator Jay Morris's SB 39. You and I have a big problem with this bill, Chris. This is trying to say that if you hold prisoners hostage past their release date, you can't be held accountable for it. So it's not fixing a problem. It's trying to say that the problem is not really anything that you can be sued for.
Not only that, Danielle, it's not fixing the problem, it's immunizing from liability the people who caused the problem.
Yeah, fix your systems. They need to fix their systems.
They need to fix their systems.
Yeah.
Don't punish the people who are. We have a massive over-detention problem in Louisiana, and the Department of Corrections has a $1 billion annual budget or more. Certainly, they can implement a system that precisely determines when an inmate should be released and make sure that they honor the law in that respect. And inmates who are held in prison month after month after month beyond their sentence, the state should not be immunized from liability for that. That's false imprisonment, and there should be liability there. I believe that everybody should have to pay their dues when they commit crimes, and I believe in accountability. It's as do you. But once their dues are paid and the slate is washed clean, you have to release people. To say that the state should have no liability when they don't do their jobs, particularly when it comes to fundamental liberty and fundamental freedom, is a very bad look for our state. So this is a very bad bill, SB 39. We don't have a call to action up on it yet, but I do intend to testify against it and get a call to action up on this very soon. This
And
is Jay
Chris,
Morris's bill.
you know, what came to mind when you were speaking is just I bet the prisons didn't have any trouble keeping track of who was vaccinated and who was unvaccinated during COVID. So if they can keep track of things like that, I bet they can keep track of something that as important as when to let someone go.
Great comparison, great point.
We've all had instances crop up where we could use the advice or skills of a trusted attorney. Whether you're looking at the implications of new laws for your business, signing a contract or a lease, looking to write a will or establish a trust, or even resolve a dispute with your credit card company, Legal Shield has got you covered. For over 50 years, Legal Shield has made it affordable and easy to access a dedicated lawyer. With the app, Legal Shield is like having a lawyer in your back pocket. For covered emergencies, Legal Shield is here for you 24/7, plans to fit any stage of life. The State of Freedom is proud to be teamed up with Legal Shield as clients and affiliates. To learn more or to sign up, visit the Shop Our Partners page on freedomstate.us or check out the link in the show notes. Thank you for supporting the State of Freedom.
Okay, tomorrow, also a busy day, but much, much more calm than today. Senate Health and Welfare, we'll be hearing or having open for debate Senator McMath's nutrition bill, SB 14. This is an exciting one, Chris, and I think Senator Miguez's similar bill has already passed out of committee, but this one has a lot more to it.
Yeah, and this is going to get the additives, the chemicals, the processed garbage out of the food that kids eat. Senator McMath is a very conscientious legislator. He has a personal issue with this because his wife has a dietary issue, but it's very important that our kids are not eating junk in school. So this is going to go to the Senate Health and Welfare Committee tomorrow. My understanding, and I haven't confirmed this yet, is that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. may be here tomorrow. I don't know if he's testifying, but he should be in the halls of the legislature tomorrow, and because the bill is that important. So we thank Senator McMath for bringing this. I intend to testify in favor of SB 14, and we're working on a call to action on this bill as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I hope that Secretary Kennedy comes. I would love to see him. I'd love to interview him, Chris. So we'll see if that's possible.
Absolutely.
Put in a plug with Senator McMath for us.
Shall do.
All right. Okay. Just a couple more tomorrow. Senate Governmental Affairs. This is Senate Bill 89 by Representative Bowie. And I was taking a particular interest in this one because it seems like Senator Bowie has the same interest as you and I do in defraying some of the governor's power. And this one is related to the appointments to the Port of New Orleans.
Yeah, and this bill will require any potential appointees to the Port of New Orleans to be confirmed by the Senate, which is a very, very good thing. As a general principle, under the Constitution, it's important that the executive, that legislative oversight be properly exercised over any and all executive decisions, especially when it comes to appointments to a port that is this powerful. So we agree with Senator Bowie. He's a Democrat, but we like Senator Bowie, and I'm looking forward to testifying in favor of this bill. So we're opposed to do any legislation, as we've talked about, that increases the power of the executive, the power of the governor, and we support any legislation that properly diminishes that power to some degree, and this bill does.
Yeah. And that's, maybe that's not going to be true forever once the levers of power in the state are rectified. But as it stands now, we do continue to have an imperial governorship, and the governor does continue to operate as an imperial governor. And so this is what we can do in the meantime to help right that.
Yes, and I think it's the legislators should understand that their fundamental responsibility is to be a check against executive power and executive overreach. That's their responsibility under the Constitution. Many of them are reluctant to exercise that role because they're afraid of reprisal and retaliation, because the governor will then go through and strike out in budget bills money that their districts need for infrastructure and projects and so forth. So that is the game that is being played at the legislature right now. And it's unfortunate. But he's at a 27% approval rating right now, by the way, on a very reputable poll and report that I received. Governor Landry's at 27%. That is the same approval rating that Governor Jindal had just before he left office. So it took him 3.5 years or so to get to 27%. Jeff Landry has achieved that ignominious objective in
record
just
time.
under a year, or a year and a half, maybe.
Well, I think we can say it pretty clearly. The Democrats already didn't like him before he got in, I'm sure. That's probably fairly easy to say. The conservatives have been extremely disappointed. So the remainder of the people who like him are either A, not paying attention, or B, I would say they're probably rhino establishments.
Couldn't agree more. Governor Landry is hemorrhaging support among grassroots conservatives. And it's up to him and only him to change the trajectory, to change the ship. Nobody wants him to succeed more than us, more than the state of freedom, and more than citizens across Louisiana. But he has to make the decision about where he stands and on whose behalf he stands.
Yeah, well said, Chris. Well said. And we will, like you said, be the biggest champions when he's doing things that are on behalf of the people. So time will tell. Time will tell. Hope things turn around. All right. Last up, I believe, for the day, Chris, this is tomorrow, Senate Governmental Affairs. Senator Jay Morris is bringing Senate Bill 8, and this is around civil service firings.
And I think my understanding, Danielle, right now, one of the reasons why I think some of the incompetence and deficiencies exist in state government is that it's so difficult to fire classified civil service employees. It's almost impossible to fire them. And unless there is a possibility that you could lose your job, sometimes it creates a disincentive to be your best. It creates a disincentive to be excellent and to do your job as well as you can do it. And so I think the objective of this bill is to make it easier to terminate classified civil service employees in Louisiana, precisely so that the government can become more accountable to the people, because employees of state government are more accountable to the people and to their superiors. And so that's where we are on that bill. And I'm going to try to testify in favor of SB tomorrow as well.
Yeah. And Chris, when I was in big corporate, we had layoffs every 18 months minimum. It could happen more often than that. The axe could drop on you any moment. And I tell you what, people paid a lot more attention. I wouldn't advocate for layoffs every 18 months. It creates some instability, a lot of unneeded panic. But it did the job. It made the company more effective, I think. So
yeah, and it reminds me, Danielle, Thomas Jefferson said that the flower of liberty must be watered from time to time with the blood of patriots. I think you could make the argument that the flower of competence must be watered from time to time with employee terminations.
Yeah, I like that. What a poet. All right, Chris. Well, I know you've got to head off to the legislature. Just a couple reminders for folks. Please, by all means, go to LACAG's website, lacag.org. Go to the Action Center there. Take action on every single item that is important to you and your family and your community. We want to make sure that our voices are heard loud and clear. And there's no opportunity for the legislators to say, people did not weigh in, so I did what I thought was best.
Yes, and that's a great point, Danielle. And please check the website regularly, because we will have calls to action going up regularly, probably every day. So we just want you to be in the habit of daily checking the LACAG.org Action Center so that you can make sure you're up to date on all the calls to action. Danielle, before I go, I want to say that John F. Kennedy has said, and I love this quote, that the people are the boss. and we will get the government that we demand and we deserve. So let's demand good government. Let's do it unapologetically. And that's how we will get this job done. And that's how we'll preserve liberty, not only for ourselves and our families, but for future generations. So we're in this fight. And with Louisiana citizens by our side, there's no way we can fail, Danielle.
That's right. Awesome, Chris. Well, God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Knock 'em dead.
Inveighing we shall go. God bless you, Danielle.
See you, Chris. The State of Freedom is a listener-supported podcast. We're committed to pursuing the truth about policymaking, decisions, and situations in Louisiana and at the national level that stand to impact our freedoms.
Please become a monthly supporter of the State of Freedom at freedomstate.us as we continue to expand the voice of liberty across Louisiana and beyond.
Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Be sure and check out the show notes for this episode. You can always go there and find the calls to action and resources mentioned in the show, and you can find out more information about our advertisers there as well. If you want to learn more about us or support our work, visit freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit LACAG.org. We'll see you next time. God bless.